Hey, how's it going? So the other day when I was browsing YouTube, I found this video by someone named Alberta Tech, and the title of the video was Why Devs Are Obsessed with Claude Code. And I clicked into it without thinking about it because I thought the topic was really interesting. And before the video got really into it, I immediately turned it off because I thought this would be a perfect topic for me to also talk about. You see, I'm definitely addicted to Claude Code, not in like a casual way, but basically, I have 5 to 10 instances of Claude Code going at almost all times throughout the day, across multiple machines, on cloud and location. I'm remote controlling and SSHing into different machines. I literally have spent tens of thousands of dollars in tokens. But right now, I'm maximizing the amount that I can learn leveraging all of these tools. And in fact, I feel like these tools itself, there's a skill gap between people who know how to use Claude Code and Codex and these AI coding tools really well and versus people who don't. And honestly, I feel like a lot of developers are in this same boat right now. A lot of things are changing. People want to know what the new norm will look like. So when I saw this thumbnail, I really started to think about why am I addicted to Claude Code? And the answer that I came to was a lot more interesting than the fact that it just writes a lot of code really fast for me. Now, there's actually another really interesting thing that I realized when I was thinking through all of this stuff is that there is this real divide going on right now in the tech industry, especially around AI coding and AI usage. On one side of the coin is basically, people who are saying that AI is the future, AI coding is gonna dominate everything, and there's no going back. The other side of the coin is that there are developers saying that using these tools are destroying our own craft. We're outsourcing our thinking, and then that the entire thing is just hype cycles that's going to collapse. And these are a lot of the people really rag on AI coding, and they say that the LLMs are very stupid and things like that. I honestly think both sides has some point and some merit and some kind of flawed arguments in my opinion. But when I was thinking through all of this reasons why we're addicted to Claude Code, I think this particular topic was very important to kind of address, because I realized that being addicted to these things was only a certain types of personalities, in my opinion. And we're going to be talking about that. We're going to look through the psychology behind it, because the good and the bad arguments, I believe, both fall out of the psychology. It really depends on your perspective. But for this video, I do think having a quick context of who I am and why my take matters in all of this is, I think, relevant. So, I'm a staff software engineer at Meta. I've been an engineer for more than 10 years. Right now, I'm primarily a mobile engineer, but I have a ton of experience. I've done full stack engineering. I've done cloud engineering. I shipped a ton of products across a ton of different apps, touching billions of users. And on the AI side, I'm not just a typical Claude Code users. I've tried basically every coding tool that's out there, Codex, Cursor, Open Code, local developments using Olama and Gemma models, and even dabbling my toes into comfy UI, image generation, and audio generation using Suno, and video generation using Comfy and also VO3. I built entire projects end to end using all of these tools, and I write about it publicly in my newsletter. If you're not subscribed, go and check it out. But right now, I would say Claude Code is my main driver. I do use Codex to basically do a lot of my second pair of eyes, PR reviews. And sometimes I do some local work and local cron jobs with Open Code leveraging Gemma 4. So I literally use all of the tools. I don't put all of my eggs in one basket, and I really try to use the right tool for the right job. Now, I'm not sponsored by any of these companies. I just use this stuff constantly. And I also lead a ton of AI initiatives at work. I've trained hundreds of engineers on Claude Code and these other things. So I know this stuff. And when I really look at the addiction itself, I don't think it's really about the code at all. I mean, obviously it generates the code, but for me, Claude Code isn't just really about the code. And I kind of boiled it down to 3 psychological hooks that these tools really hook into you. And I really think all 3 of them have to be present for you to be truly addicted. But yeah, anyways. So reason number 1 for me is that I think these tools feels like a video game. Now, I played a ton of StarCraft growing up, Brood War was my gem. I am Korean after all. And if you play StarCraft, you will definitely know the feeling of juggling like macro and micro at the same time. Managing your base, building out your factories, your SCVs, while also like switching to a different area of the map and controlling your units and fighting, doing the little micro adjustments, right? Most people find that pretty exhausting, honestly, but some people find it extremely addicting. And I am one of those people. And to me, running Claude Code and like Codex at scale feels exactly like this. And the way I view it is the micro is really just like navigating between your sessions. I have multiple Claude Code sessions, multiple terminals, multiple panes, and I have like hotkeyed everything so that I could quickly navigate to it. If you've used Vim, you're probably familiar with this feeling. And the macro part of this is really the context, like managing the context of all of these different agents in different projects. And when you go into one pane or one instance, you tell the agent quickly what to do. Then you go to another one, and then you go to another one. And then it's this cycle where you're quickly validating the outputs and then steering the agents and then going to the next, and so forth and so forth. And there's also this layer of agentic engineering and building out harnesses, which to me is kind of like building out your bases so that you can do more and more automations in the future. Now, I used to be one of those engineers who love to code. I really love coding the old way, the old fashioned way. It's crazy to say that. But that feeling of being in the zone where you have the entire mental picture of the problem in your head and you're just locked in, cranking away at the problem. Essentially, you're like just executing, pure execution. And there's nothing really like it. I would say like woodworking is very similar. You know where all the pieces go in your mind and you're just picking up the tools. It feels very cathartic. And honestly, with AI coding, you don't really have that. Like it's very hard to do that, especially if you just have one single instance and you're just waiting for the results and you get distracted and you're doing something else. You're constantly context switching. It's very difficult. But for me, I found this new like being in the zone by playing this game, playing StarCraft in a sense. And it's really this zone of juggling the agents. And if your brain is wired in a way where you enjoy this kind of work, I do think you need to be a little bit ADHD, grew up on like strategy games, like RTS games like me, then this new zone can feel fantastic. And to me, this is what I'm addicted to right now. This kind of like flow of juggling agents. But I will say a ton of people absolutely hate this kind of workflow. Now, reason number 2 is that you're a ferocious builder. You're a builder at heart. And what I mean by this is that you have to be this like kind of person who has endless projects to do, like endless ideas, endless things that you want to make. And most people honestly just are not like that. Most people, they have a job, they, code, and then they don't do that after their job. Most engineers I know actually don't code on their free time. Work is work and they have their own hobbies. And if you're in this camp of like just, people who are doing it for work, then it's just a mild productivity boost, right? And you're not going to really try to dig into this. And having to learn all of this stuff will like kind of just annoy you. But if you're the kind of person who wants to build 10 things every single month, who has like backlogs of side projects, endless side projects, and you just see problems everywhere and you want to immediately solve all of them, then Claude Code and like Codex is just hits differently. It really lowers the cost of you being able to build an idea that you have in like orders of magnitudes that's like incredibly like free. And once you can just prompt things into existence just with the thought of your mind and just typing some things in, it's really hard to go back the old ways. For me, anytime I work on a project, there's this inherent opportunity cost to coding things manually now, because I can get 80% of like what I want with a project with 20% of the effort, maybe even less. And honestly, for side projects, I'd rather ship them and just use them than be perfect, have perfect code, perfect quality, perfect understanding. I don't need all of that for side project. And that's why it's really hard for me to go, because I'm a builder at heart. and I build things all the time. Now, reason number 3 is automation. Automation is a reward in itself. If you ever set up a workflow that just like runs on its own on some schedule, like you spend a lot of time building it up, but you'll know exactly what this feeling is. There's this like very specific kind of satisfaction when you build a system and it keeps paying back dividends and saving you time and doing work for you literally while you're sleeping. I don't think it's a secret that people are really interested in this kind of topic because it can help you make money and do all these things. But for me, automating and having robots or like just software automatically do things for me, there's certain kind of reward and addiction to it. My newsletter is actually a really good example. I've talked about it in a few different videos and I've gave podcasts about it. But essentially for me, the way I create a newsletter now is I just talk about a certain topic in my car. I just kind of brain dump and have like a voice recorded. That gets transcribed and it goes into a pipeline that I built with Claude Code. And that pipeline pulls all of my relevant context from previous writings and everything. And then it writes me a draft in my voice, in my rules. It reviews it. I have an agent team set up that like has an editor, a context gatherer, and the writer, and then it just like kind of goes and grades itself and keeps doing that until it's ready. And then I generate images all automatically that I can post into Substack. Now, to me, that's not really a productivity trick. Like this is me like building systems, building automations that saves me a ton of times and actually helps me run my newsletters. I don't think I could do it without it. And same with this YouTube channel. I'm building systems constantly behind the scenes that help me make more videos, make more engaging content, do more research. It kind of builds into my builder thing, but for me, it's this automation angle that is like really powerful. It feels like I'm duplicating myself and cloning myself to be able to like do more things in a day. And I wrote about this thing in one of my newsletters on why I can't enjoy anything anymore, but I do enjoy these kind of things. Being productive, having autonomous things be productive for me. I really enjoy those things. Now, that's the high level reasons. And there's actually one more last thing about AI coding that is really funny. People joke about this, but there's this thing called one more prompt. And it's like the feeling of pulling a slot machine, right? One of my coworkers always say one more prompt before they go to lunch. And honestly, sometimes it feels like this. Obviously, if you know what you're doing, then you're more steering, right? You're not just like shooting in the dark. But there is this feeling that sometimes you might not know, and then Claude will just give you the right answers or interesting answers. In my opinion, Claude Code and Codex, they're very creative on their own as well. Most people think they're not, but I think they are. It really depends on how you prompt it and how you do the context engineering. So this is the addiction side of things, I think, and I'm fully addicted. But I also wanted to talk about the issues of all of this stuff, because I think there's a huge group of people who genuinely hate this stuff. They like just revolt when they hear AI coding and all those things. And I think a lot of them have a few good points. So I wanted to kind of like talk about that thought because I've been thinking about that side of the coin a lot too, because I also was the type of person who genuinely enjoyed coding by hand. I think there's some amount of artistry there that people are going to lose. Now, I think there's 4 or so real reasons why people have been pushing back so much on all of this. And if you're not addicted to Claude Code, if you're not using it, I guarantee you're probably feeling some of these. Now, first of all, I think there is a moral argument, right? Training data, copyright, the ethics of like where these models came from. And, I have my own opinions on this, but honestly, I think my opinions are pretty moot at this point, right? The industry is going to move forward whether I'm opt in to this or not. Every piece of software you touch in the next few years will have AI under the hood. And it really does already, right? More and more companies are just like embedding it into their software. So morally, you can draw a line wherever you want, but that line is getting harder to hold every single year. It's kind of like Nike and like sweatshops, right? Honestly, it sucks. I don't know what to think about it, but I'm going to get into why I think it doesn't really matter. Now, secondly, there's the artisans, right? People who love to code for the sake of coding itself. They really got into this because, it's that feeling, that feeling that I was talking about with woodworking, being in the zone. It's that like manually building something piece by piece in like deep focused chunks. AI coding doesn't give you that feeling at all. Even my like new zone that I talk about with playing StarCraft, it's not the same thing. It's like a different high. But if you don't like this new way of coding, this new like agentic, being a manager of agents, no amount of convincing you is going to change that. And honestly, I think that's fine. Not everyone is the same. But I will say you should know why you feel so angry about some of this stuff. Why managing agents feel so bad. Because it's just inherently different and you're losing that ability to code manually. Now, the third reason I think is the perfectionists. People who strive to be perfect, like high bar, high quality, everything needs to be perfect. In my opinion, AI still makes mistakes all the time. There's never been a time where I'm like, that's 100% correct all the time. There's always things that I can fix. But a lot of times people will look at the output and then they'll just like write it off because they didn't like this way they wrote, or it's like too verbose, or like it didn't do it exactly the way that they would do it. But in my experience, when someone says this kind of stuff, like this AI is garbage, it keeps making stupid mistakes, what that usually signals to me is that they haven't built enough context or harnesses or validation loops around it. I think there's this really good podcast that I listened to with Andre Kaparthi, and he calls a lot of these issues skill issues. And I totally agree. People who really hate all of these AI coding systems and who keep saying that the AI can't do what they do. Honestly, very few tasks, in my opinion, AI can't learn how to do right now, even with the current models. Now, I will preface saying that it can't do it 100% perfectly, but it will do a damn good job if you give it the right tools, the skills, and the context to be able to do its own work. Now, the fourth and last reason is around learning. And the argument is that using AI really stunts your growth as an engineer. And honestly, on this one, for most cases, I will concede this argument. I think, especially for like side projects, like I don't really care that much sometimes for my side projects what the code looks like. I'm more interested in the outcome and not the craft. And because of that, I'm not learning every single line. But for my actual work at Meta, I read everything that I ship, right? Because you need to be able to defend what you ship in a production environment where you're sharing the code and you have to actively maintain the code with other people. And if something goes wrong, you can't just say, oh, AI wrote it, that's why it sucks. That's not a real answer. It's not something that is defendable. And the thing is, you will see this pattern from people, especially from new companies who are starting now. They will be like, oh, AI wrote this. So in my opinion, the concerns are definitely real. But in my opinion, I think you can work around this. You can learn a ton of things with using AI if you really want to. In fact, for my own work, I spend most of the time in plan mode learning about the code base and figuring out new opportunities and then executing on it. So I would say I actually spend more time just reading and digesting the code than actually coding. But anyway, so that's why some people, in my opinion, will probably not be addicted and they'll never be addicted to this stuff. But for the people who are addicted like me, I don't think there's anything to be worried about. I actually think it's a good thing. It's really an exposure to what the job in the future is going to become. There was this really interesting thing that happened recently. There was a viral clip of Jensen from NVIDIA. He said something that a lot of people like kind of clown them on, the video is him saying,
let's say you have a software engineer or AI researcher and you pay them $500,000 a year. We do that all the time. Yeah. Okay, this is happening all over the time. That $500,000 engineer at the end of the year, I'm going to ask him how much did you spend in tokens? And that person said $5,000. I will go ape something else.
Yes.
Right. If that $500,000 engineer did not consume at least $250,000 worth of tokens, I am going to be deeply alarmed.
And I remember people laughed at him about it because for most people's AI usage right now, like usage patterns, that number sounds absurd. Like, have you tried using $10,000 worth of like tokens? It's hard. You need to be like doing some crazy stuff to get to that level. But if you kind of remove the noise a little bit and then actually think about these tools and where they're going, you can see why some of this makes sense. And it's not just Jensen trying to sell more shovels, right? Obviously, there's some of that, but I actually do think what he's saying has some merit. So think about this, like thought experiment, right? Let's say that you convert an engineer into tokens, right? And a junior engineer may need a lot of handholding, right? So you give them one task and they come back to you with like 10 follow-up questions. But if you ask a senior engineer to go, hey, go build this thing, then they'll just go, they'll talk to PMs, they'll figure out the specs, they'll make decisions, and then they come back to you when the thing that you asked for is done. All of that work that this senior engineer did is basically invisible work, right? But all of that work that that senior engineer is doing behind the scenes is like extra work. And in our case, like more tokens being spent, but it's all invisible. Now, shift the lens back. So basically, if you can get the minimal amount of tokens in as inputs, like the query, and the maximum high quality tokens out, that's leverage. That's real leverage. So if you believe in the concept that more tokens means more work done, and more work done means, more business outcomes, that just means more outcomes fundamentally just means more value. And anyone who has like dipped their toes into compound engineering and agentic harnesses and building these workflows kind of understands what this is and how this can be possible, right? So essentially, once you get to a point where you're building out these systems and tooling for these agents, they have their own self-validations. They can fix their own bugs before you even see it. And once you build all of these things, you'll notice the cost of doing these all the time is actually pretty expensive from a tokens perspective. But that's because they're doing a ton of stuff. This like senior engineer's work where it just knows how to do all these things. So once you get into that level, Jensen's quote doesn't sound that crazy anymore. Honestly, it sounds obvious. It's like an obvious feature. So, which means to me that the job is fundamentally shifting now. And I'm increasingly convinced that in a few years, even things like reviewing code by yourself will be a smell, which is insane to me, right? Like right now, that's my biggest bottlenecks. But there will be a time where the agents will review code better than you. And I think we're already almost there. So the real work in the future will be continuing to do agentic engineering, building harnesses, removing friction for the agents, getting your code base AI ready, giving the agents like observable layers like telemetry, good feedback loops, and also fine tuning them to be able to understand taste, defining what done means. These are the skills that you're going to have to learn now. And being addicted to Claude Code is going to get you there. And developers who are addicted to Claude Code right now are the ones who are going to get there. And honestly, they're not addicted to code completions. They're addicted to this like new preview of what the work is going to look like next. So where does that leave all of us? Developers are addicted to AI and for these like 3 reasons that I mentioned, right? So where does this leave us, right? People are addicted, people hate it. But if you're somewhere in the middle, if you're on the fence, my suggestion is very simple. You don't have to be a power user overnight. You should just pick one workflow and try to automate it and just do it every week. Just keep building onto Claude Code. I'll tell you right now, the people who hate like this AI coding stuff, and they can actually code manually, like with their hands. It's crazy to say, but people will actually get to do that. They will not have a 9-to-5 job in coding. They'll do something else. There might be content creators or someone rich. If you have a 9-to-5, you have no choice in this matter in the future. So I would say you should embrace it. Figure out new ways for you to enjoy this new work. That's how it started for me. And somehow I ended up running like all of these instances and like actually figuring out a way to enjoy it. But the bigger point that I want you to walk away with in this video is that the future job isn't whether you write the code, it's whether you're going to be building these systems, right? These agentic systems, that write the code for you. And all of the people who are addicted right now are building that muscle early. And honestly, I think this single thing is going to be the most smartest thing that you decide to pursue. So get addicted. As crazy as that sounds. So thanks for watching this video. I have a ton of videos around Claude Code and Agentic Engineer, which I think are great videos to watch after this. And don't forget to subscribe to my newsletter, Push to Prod. I write and give away a bunch of like my skills and stuff randomly at times. But yeah, I'll see you on the next one.